So coming back to the precious Garland of the Sublime Path, we are at the 10 things on which you should depend. Verse number 9 today. Depend on disciples who are fortunate, devoted, and respectful.
写总是的，写总是的，台巴堂，库巴，台巴台开始那拉玛堂，秋堂拉玛了，台巴有吧，六库巴有吧，我台有那的拉面秋意呢，像偏给的是，但没那这是偏把我写了，我这娘是那个偏给的是，我听那个秋堂他们去建议，对面这了那种了，秋都这他们去建议是对吧的那样的，对吧的台巴台有呢，这里用个的是。对面这了，的呢是那个了，我听你，我听你强调了，我听你偏多就个的是，这说说人来听台巴的说的，那么呢台巴的不管用呢。
So then, so when we engage in, so a disciple should, so a disciple who practices the Dharma should rely on faith and devotion to the Dharma and to the Guru. Because this mind of faith and devotion is what benefits you. So with your body, you pay respect, and with your mind you develop faith and devotion. And if you have devotion and respect, then the words of Dharma taught by the Lama will actually benefit your mind. If you do not have any respect, then they obviously will not be of a lot of benefit. It is said that all phenomena, everything, depends on causes and conditions. The condition is the aspiration. So therefore, all outcomes depend on the aspiration.
我真的到别讲了，台湾的事情，那应该说新看的是大王了。我在新看的11期，这11期讲新看大王的，他出名呢，有嘛的，他出名呢，出在路拉说吧，台湾中心提前他们这样的，真的新老多是要不金融的。但说是我当初呢，这张台湾他对吧？这就用那真的两年之中偏多钱的，这就的是，我这个嘛就是没来的怕，但嘛话马拉洛杉矶的话，马拉洛杉矶对这可能汤姆，马拉这样可话咱们去这，Mexico，这他们今天弄完的是个说过，我这旅的这去真的讲，我等马拉去起码可能他都不忙不当的，常常他不用说，他那么先把这球查出来，就当晚弄什么的上，这旅来用多少，这他马拉都要的是那个什么的，我讲啊。一块钱过来，那一块钱长的真的，他就要了什么的，这怎么样？常常他的设计、逻辑、商业要怎么那么呢？有什么的，别个来可不的。这先把这说那对等下是不是设计、逻辑、商业，等下那个嘛的，我这上面这上嘛了是，这就怎么办？对对对吧？我这就弄这事吧。
So for example, it's like planting a field, planting some seeds into a field, and many conditions have to come together. You need a good soil and water, and if some of it is missing, then nothing will grow. So these conditions, like the water, is like your faith, and if if all these causes come together, then the crop will grow. So if you have devotion and respect to the guru, then your practice will benefit from that. For example, in the case of Milarepa and Marpa, and before Milarepa, I had even met Marpa, when he just heard his name, the whole world really stopped for a moment when he just heard his name. And he was just thinking of Marpa. And then under Marpa, he endured a lot of hardships. Marpa was very harsh on him. And sometimes to the point where Milarepa thought, he's not going to give me the Dharma. Maybe I better go somewhere else. he never thought anything bad about Marpa, but he just thought of himself as a very sinful person and thought he just doesn't have the fortune to receive those teachings from Marpa. So he considered going somewhere else. But then sometimes he thought that, but then on the other hand, it's really difficult to find these instructions that leads to liberation in one lifetime. I won't find them anywhere else anyway. So he always kind of hung on and he continued to stay with Marpa.
وأظن تجينا لو ما تتيان كوريس تبادل ليس كربا تبا تنوك لو ما تتيان كوريس كده تا تبادل كوبا مينا شوينا تونيا شيماس تبا ميبي منا نكربو يونتي من يوم زي كورا تنتوتينا تبا ميبي منا نكربو يونتي يوم مالس 상호메 세바 뉴 뭐지시 그 상호메 세디 인조제 신가 되지나 뉴 뭐지 그 말와 와서 나지 차도를 송라테 펜토 말레스 뭐다 나랑 저제 롭종다 시청신 롭자리나 제 소소 그렇게한테 양모도 롭종한테 제 소소소 이체 고체의 소소 된바 야보나 아 롭종한테 야보 치토야라 아 핑게로 와 와서 마도제 다르게 그냥 시라 마가바시 근데 제 롭종치야 지주세라 시라 소소 된바 미我真这几天都在路上在我汽车嘛，我在哪一个区呢？在哪一个？我真的，我的偏不多的区是那边讲接的是，他特别明白没在区域里，在那边讲接是，讲接是呢，他或者不接，马来西讲接装备了，听到在那边讲接就是，他不他见有啊，我他见呢讲接就是一万的车，听到那边讲接就是了，在那边讲接就是么特别没得区域呢，那特别早的啦，是吧？我的该说马来西亚马干呢？有点偏头，还是在那边讲这的意思。
Teba me bala chusina tinitik basagri.
我在讲这的，讲这有了，那边讲这些，老会讲这些的，讲这可以有，也话听到那边讲这些的，这方面学一下的意思。讲这的都地方中了，同他们那个些有的吧。你讲这一般中便宜的多的了。他可能不对，他这样哪有的。
And so then like it's about how the Lama should depend on a disciple too. So that's the kind of disciple that he would want to have. It has to be someone who has faith and respect and interest in the Dharma and the teachings. Because if they have no belief, no faith, then no good quality will come from that. They will not develop any good quality. For example, a faithless person is like a burnt seed. If a seed is burned, then no crop can grow from that. It's useless. So also similarly, just in an ordinary context, if you go to school and learn something from a teacher, you might have a good teacher that can teach you anything. But then if the student is not really interested in what the teacher has to say and is not really motivated to learn anything, doesn't listen, then the student won't learn anything, no matter how good the teacher is. And actually, it is also said in the Jewel Ornament of Liberation, the Gampopa also said that there's a different kind of divisions that are explained there about like who one should teach the Dharma to. And it is said that one should not teach it to those who have no faith, because in that case it doesn't benefit them, and then in that case it would just become like idle talk, and idle talk is a non-virtuous act.
我真的，真的就医呢，就做出来的是，固定病了解的话，这就出来的，偏去啥话说，啥话说，真的地方说做是吧？我啥话的是我听的，我听就知道的中国。
And so for this reason, if one teaches the Dhamma to someone who is not really interested in the teachings, it would be a waste of time, and it would also be a kind of like a downfall. Like it would lead to like corruption or one's own downfall.
真的，这拉玛阿皮巴嘞，是拉玛阿皮巴呢，那拉玛堂的拉玛堂，从巴堂这娘家的是，这当拉玛堂这中的是，是吧？当然做工作那有帮老平时堂这娘把这是，拉玛呢，啊。
Are 공직?
bon lo pen su tam tsai nyam ba ji
음.
bon de lo la ma ni ta tam tsai ji ba res ni na ta tam tsai chung ba tam tsai nyam ba se la ba de tam tsai ta la me ke tam tsai zong gu lo me ke tam tsai zong gu ni ke tam tsai zong gu res chung ba da ba wo tang bo lo pong da ba wo tang bo lo pong da lo me zhe ba da ba se tang tang bo ni ma ni ta la ma de ta chi chi ma bo xia do 我这里去过的是那边那么大个是的，因为那他经常自己是搞那个对手和上来去搞那个朋友吧，我这搞那个朋友的，当然在说，你们俩去都你们那经常就可以，那在路面去那么大呀，这是个那面去那么大呀，搞那个不下的可以，可是在那么说你们呀，我说你们里面当上那么去嘛，我们不是大公牛嘛，是吧？
KTTC 보면 또
那面去这罗马的在大公呢。
음.
다고나 되네 람상 해게 말와 샤로 마보데 다시치야 투수 코나 미와나 소 니마이나
음.
되제 로 마보 다시치 마보 라요라 센자 되게
음.
나다 냠냐 치년 오제 말라레 페송 냠냐 치년 도나 다 수단다 틀라 초된 거레스 냠냐 치도 와레고나
음.
나이레다
Um, so then it says in a text called the 50 verses on devotion to the guru, the 50 verses on guru devotion. It says, so the Lama and the disciple share an equal samaya. So the Lama and the disciple have the same samaya. So they both must keep samaya, in other words. And it's also said in the Gongchik that the samaya of master and disciple is the same. So both need to keep their samaya. And so in the old days, it was said that Lama must, just as the disciple must examine the Lama also must examine the disciple. But so then that's not really practical nowadays so much anymore, because it's if the Lama would really examine the disciples, it would get really difficult nowadays. So also in the old days, it would actually say that it takes many years of examining, and nowadays no one has time to examine someone for many years, and so therefore actually it is really according to Milarepa said actually that mainly it's about do they want to practice or not. If somebody simply wants to practice, that's enough. If they want to practice, you must teach them the Dharma.
这那么他过来西巴的切中嘛，下是他西巴的气象这个那就吧有了，我就把他就让那边全把他信息点把它下是我在这开清波的跟他说，这些怎么能你们来去投给的？这些怎么能你们来去投给嘛？全把现在在俺说做全红呀子，买几个是呀子，信息现在在研究现在在大家的这信息那票子了吧？我这这些年现在在开清波下头跟他说可以呢。 추위나 해친보는 직선이나 제 전시민은 내가 제 딱한 로트고 말아. 어디 차디. 제 추운 직선 이거는 개친도 차디. 냐면 진행 takwa서 개친도 차디 그래.
Then we move on to verse number 10. Always depend on mindfulness and watchfulness during the 4 bodily activities. So this one is quite important. Always be mindful is very important. Only if you're mindful will you be able to practice. If you're not mindful, you're not actually practicing. And so here it says mindfulness and watchfulness. So mindfulness is just being aware of the present moment, to be meant to be present. And then watchfulness is to watch out, to be on the watch out for afflictions or anything to arise. And so that alertness and mindfulness is always important, not just in the Dharma. It's also important out in the world, because if you're unmindful, you will not be able to do anything of good quality. So it's no matter what you do, it's always important.
我真的当然是叫他们写生呢，做特别做都都把狼嘛，这说是吧？做都我才去写的吧？
도와 독바 그래.
狼嘛是吧？
되게 쉽하대.
로도
Ngaba. Ane.
원제 와서로 로도 로차 년도 세월에 로차 년도 나와.
Mm-hmm.
음.
Yeah, and so it says that be mindful throughout the four activities. So basically in whatever you do, but the four activities are when you're walking around, when you're staying somewhere, when you're sitting, when you're rising, or when you're sleeping.
我真的，但多那咋让给那么点看呢？就那去年们去搞一那的，现在弄嘛搞中华一那的，去年点过来也是。我这就是同米去，他提那有人讲说，就是老年人，就是老年人多那看就叫他们自己是，多那叫他们可能去那提讲了，让给sem的，那个见着吧是，让给sem那个见着，就是前头写一点不了些，行动着吧，就是老年人中多。我的是。
So, oh yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Um, and so, mm, um, so whether it is when you practice the Dharma and you're with the Guru, or whether you engage in any other activity, at all times, it's important to look at your mind. And the Bodhisattva, Thomas Ambo said in the 37 Bodhisattva practices, in brief, no matter what you do, always ask yourself, what is the state of my mind? Sustaining mindfulness and awareness at all times accomplish the benefit of others. This is the practice of bodhisattvas.
我当时讲究呢，我下面那把的因为牛毛气味差呢，你下面那把的因素呢，那牛毛别强的气味，现在说法可那点呢，现在说出去牛毛的内容给的是，我的牛毛气味差的那种是吧？我这样，但就让那现在的气象中，这话咱都把你话恰吧是哪嘛的吧？我这种这块中这话说，就那么可的气呢，气过来也是气味呢是均匀。我在前面才说，就那别强了，我说恐怕讲可能。就先从是听起呢，全把这恐怕讲说呢，这就从听起呢，这些人多那么多，恐怕现在天天这几千多路的现在恐怕讲着呢，千万人偏给的，我这呢的都要呢，这这啊一类，这说都这呈现做单个说的今天中午这种这样趟写进的你特别求的这玩意是这样趟写进的。特别去这玩的么意思。
So the text mentions again those four activities in whatever you do, whether you're walking around, you're sitting, you're standing, you're sleeping or lying down, at all times, you have to look at your mind and ask, what am I doing? What is the state of my mind? In the Bodhicharya Vatara, it says that if you're distracted, then the afflictions will stay in your mind. And also it is said that when you're walking around, don't walk around too quickly, because if you move around too quickly, then you're more likely to be distracted. If you walk and move around slowly, you're less likely to be distracted. And so in this way, similarly, whatever you do, when you're sitting or walking, whatever you do, be mindful. And Jigten Sumgön also said that mindfulness and watchfulness, these are the roots of the Dharma.
我这就当是啦，因为
对，春秋刚的言那的牛毛那个，
对，我当时有推荐就当时给我的那个，这当时也不去浪多嘛，就我全把去过的也是，全上嘛是，他留下读书去呗，写一点，我说这读书去写一点，我这前些天你不求成绩去开清补的也是，我这些开清补了吧，这就是去完了这种是就那是吧，大学你一趟过的，六趟做完没了，给我想想，你们就是想那样的，那样你们家什么种多吧，那这样的写信。他们这种 他们这边别种些大的在这天幕家的种多。
Mhm. Um, so therefore, it says in the text, at all times, with body and mind, be mindful of your body and mind, and do not forget of what you actually do, whether it is virtues or non-virtues. And never let go of alertness, watching out, like for any possibility of negativity to arise. This is truly important for Dharma practitioner. Then Shantideva, as said in the Bodhicharyavatara, 流动错。
你把过现在在用的这那个啦，绿
嗯
错啊，没啦，绿错呀，是没那开嘛是，拉上没那开嘛是，这里给
哼，
我上都个是，像那么样没得是，我的呢，现在你们就嘛是，
嗯
像中文都把那那他全把写进，像中都呢，他们这边的中学其实，我在他们这边中学中学呢，在听着像中都呢是也听不见的意思。
Yeah. So Shantideva had said that even if you um, have no wealth and no possessions, and never allow your virtue to decline. Never allow your mind to deteriorate. Always be mindful and watch out for desire to arise within your mind. Protect your mind. I fold my hands to anyone who makes an effort in this.
真的他这就是从没上过知道的，咱多这就是老难拿是吧？让个出啊，让个马他呢，除非说是除非其实直接军队让个出啊，到大的东啊，就是老难意思，出啊还可能怕不下的，就是老难意思，我也是。
And again, in the 37 Bodhisattva practices, the Bodhisattva Ngutritome says that if you do not examine your own faults, you may look like a practitioner, but not be acting like one. For this reason, always examine your own fault and abandon them. This is the practice of bodhisattvas.
我真的我昨晚的就那有，什么时候都有马头的，都有忙不这些钱，但是什么时候都有马头，都有现在你我忙嘛怕对，让他别让休假的吧，这什么重要都有马头，都有忙不这天天吃都有嘛，所以什么时候都有西过的这种多。
And then again, it says in the Bodhicharyavatara, if you do not discipline your own mind, then any other outer discipline is of no benefit, is useless. So meaning that if disciplining the mind is if you do not subdue your own afflictive emotions, if you don't discipline your mind, then even there are many physical disciplines and austerities you might put your body through. All of these kind of exercises are useless if you cannot discipline your mind.
我真的真的让唐伯在全国手对这出版的这运动多了去，这唐伯对叔叔节我这因为这过上你把忙不穷的是，那从榜样来了我有嘛的是，我这榜样来了我们对这你把忙不穷，这让你把这出啊是，让打起去这帮过的是，这帮出嘛的，这个下乡帮出嘛的，我这帮出嘛的，选这个么都上，这叔叔上这个么都上对吧？帮过的是呢。在拉玛这个在讲这个么多，这呢经常推出那这些帮助啥子个是不的，就那的是鸟么的，然后我们都应该嘛，那个鸟么长头跑是那么多，长头跑的鸟么长头，长是讲了哇，鸟么长头的话那它当晚十票人走，当晚十票人了是吧？讲这个这多少年了，经常讲这多呢，他们老们出外国都是最近呢，妈的。真的变成control salis da ne na to control salis ne pa to ne pa so grese che to iskale khavreste 我到那边送那是多那边送那啊，那我没听呢，你妈那边送那这，你妈那在那嘛送长期东西给的，啥这 당화 상포폰 당화 약속인다 그러라 지야다 지송가 해줘 야보레스 야보요레스 레스 아다 등상태 디스 공부를 그랬다
Is correct.
공부를 우리 나서서 등상 공부를 우리 밀랍자 센투 이제 랍자 자나 센투야 디스칼 하고 그랬다
And so then, so when we first enter the Dharma, so when we are kind of beginning practitioners, or we are kind of ordinary, one is an ordinary person. In the beginning, it's very difficult to abandon all these flaws that we have of body, speech, and mind, and we have many of them in the beginning, and if we want to have any hope of abandoning them, we have to first recognize them. So in order to recognize them, we have to examine ourselves. We have to look at ourselves and see our own faults. If there's no self kind of awareness or examination, then you will not see your own faults. If you don't see your own faults, you cannot abandon them. Then they will just stay. If you see your own fault, you don't want to have that fault, so you will feel that I don't want that. That's not good, and then you will want to give it up. So that's why it's necessary to see and recognize your own faults. And it is said that nowadays it's not so easy anymore, because nowadays when the Lama tells you your faults, you maybe you get angry at the Lama. You don't want to hear it. In the old days, actually, if the Lama points out your fault, if he exposes your hidden faults, that was actually considered the most profound instruction of all. But nowadays, you probably end up fighting and arguing with the Lama. Then you get angry, and there's no benefit from that. In the past, whatever the guru would say, you would see it as an instruction. You would see the guru as the Buddha and would follow whatever instruction he gives you. And nowadays, that's not so common anymore. And so that is why, because we are a bit more belligerent these days, it's a bit more difficult to tame our mind.
전에 당하랑 소세 제레스 정도 전에 다 소소 로폰 다고 소소 로폰 소소 체네 랑슈로 투바 시제 제리 바랑 투바 도 감도 자 소소소 다시 친구를 다시 진도 다시 윤도 태양시 대학 그래서 지시 하사 발방고에서 소소 지치네 신나 방통은 제 야사리스타 고터리 라소 남에 제라 제 신은 다사니 dim시 마라소 땡고 라마시오를 센다를 신게마 땡가담 게히 와인 풍자나 제 람보하 고데 가담 게히 카히월 생게마 그래서 어때 다제 셈 방보 다제 도 가르고제 나고 니냠 디비템을 충충 먹고 싸 또가 야를 남보 야를 제 냠냐디 치도 디가르고를 시다 치마도 나고를 샤 어디 담보 나고 매면도 제일때 소소제 지리때 배송시 제인데 감나 체크하는 체크하는 다가 오면 주는도 소다 대륙이만 깔려져 다시 체크해서 와
And it is said that so therefore, since we cannot really take the criticism, we should nowadays in particular look at our own faults and examine our own faults and see them for ourselves and ask ourselves, am I practicing according to the Dharma? Am I doing this right or not? And so on. We should always be mindful of what we really do, and if we find a mistake, then abandon it. For example, in the past, the Kadampa Geshes stories of how they have practiced this kind of mindfulness. So they would take a pile of pebbles, black and white pebbles, and they would put a white pebble for every good thought and a black pebble for every negative thought. And in the beginning, they only had black pebbles. And then they continued to be mindful and watching and knowing what's happening in their mind. And eventually they had half. And then in the end, they were only white pebbles because they kept examining their own mind.
어떤 정권 공정 가서 남아 정보 제와 티나这种 라다 샤레 손나 칠라 파파니 샤레레 손이 지야 파타 니데 로그레스 로그라서 나서 니레 손이 랑주 치치노 따로 니레 손이 랑주 파 총도 로그레스다 랑주로 총도 로그레스 총하고 그러 총부 창도 그랬어这拉玛店是没会这样的，拉玛店呢是没会穷的路个是，我这去了这种唐人去穷松，这去着他说了，这话的唐人他说穷路个是，西亚的唐人的路个哪着，
lama kyangong ra
俺讲我
kyangong
光是
okado
那边讲
yeah
过呢，
so Chamgyung Kongtrul said in calling the guru from afar, he said that these days, each and every day, we are stepping closer to our death. We're approaching death. And as I approach death, or like, I guess beings approach death, they're so closer and closer to death, but more and more harsh in their mind. And less devoted to the guru, and less loving to the Dharma friends.
真的大家最没来的，别这种多，节奏没来的吧，这把得把吃钱啥的，他就把钱的，那娘们去这些朋友的，钱的出发错不的是。他可能不钱呢，他不在他钱囊可能囊上的有的吧，可能讲有的不有的吧，这对不是你不写，这里讲这些真的，他光求去的，这他不格局写真的，我在那里写下多老穷嘛，他写呢，见穷呢，真的求你们去别，上边没啥真给着钱不是求的也是。
这些不差呢。
他几岁没来的吧？是吧？这样多。
第个上应第不 discancer 这啥上，第一个第段的，第一个
也通过哎。
一个通过东，一个看上给 disc 啥上。
他几岁没来结不？几岁没来的吧？也是。他妈的把十天啥的也是。他们就把这的也是。这去年们是那这些朋友的呢，这现在出发错是也是。我在这些朋友开心不的也是拉票，但我说这些朋友点过拉算。我真的他可能不现在去那，他妈清白的是，清白是哪上有叫了吧？这老是在穷嘛的，或者是不你有了或者某些你不写。我这件这研究进去年们现在开始进步是确实也是。我在这所说这些朋友是在你们其中呢，你们其中谈不到一见面的茶话节了，在谈不穷的茶话节的，在那国家什么的，所以这就是没来的吧，谈不成别想多。
So Milarepa was first a very sinful person, but then he was very diligent in practicing mindfulness. And as a result of that, he became accomplished in this very lifetime. And also Gampopa first was a householder. He had a wife and 2 children, a son and a daughter. And then they all died. And eventually then he became a monk and he practiced the Dharma. And this is where the Dakpo Kagyu practice lineage came from. So Dakpo is the name of Gampopa actually in Tibetan. And so if you're able to practice with mindfulness, then as Milarepa or Gampopa also had shown, it's not necessary to be, for example, a monk. So whether you're like Milarepa or Gampopa, a lay or a monk, you can practice mindfulness.
真的，他这里马拉松这种，都等俺让叔叔接我，他上节空房托过的是，我叔叔接俺让说，那叔叔接我了，等俺让说别送钱的，得空房托过的是，俺让从俺让说，他叔休假过去了，他做等起码没差那种钱过去了，俺让说忙起心脏，在啥家，在那里看忙不的，你在当地几步当样的。提供别人多几步当样的，听说开发那种人专门的在样，而且听到这点提供人，就说忙不在这两步那个乱啊说。他提推出这是我年轻人在那个提出那种这个那个没的推出这是的说法了吧？我真的在讲没别做不上街，没把讲有的是，那能就有的是，我不的是，能就有的是，我讲但就是你把这种在别下承办的心理原因就有了哈可，我这可能真的这些这好像才这样过的是，这些好像这样的你们去做过的是。 他好友都是那的方面，你前面那是打的特别重视，现在那个，这好友都是好友都是那么的是，都是那的是，后面把那咱前面那种的是，我在哪多的，我在去把的那，但这些好友没那么他把成绩嘛，我们 top 嘛的是，我这样的现在那我在重视。
So, and then so if you think even if you think I'm just an ordinary, a normal person, if you make, even as an ordinary person, if you make an effort, it will lead to accomplishment. You will attain enlightenment. And for that, mainly, you have to remember impermanence, the impermanence of this life. And that's very significant nowadays, especially because we are so busy. We have so much to do. And but also it's not just that we are so busy. Sometimes we just like to kind of waste time and have a good time and have fun and don't do anything important. For example, we just go around and just have a good time, have fun, and we sit on our phone and play on our phone for a very long time. Actually, most of our time goes there nowadays. We spend all of our time on playing on our phone. And of course, if you have something important to do there, that's fine. But if not, it's really a waste of time. And it's just important to see that the fault in that, because if you can see the fault in that, you can then turn it around and cultivate mindfulness. So see that I'm distracted and then turn it around and be mindful. In the letter to a friend, a text, it is said that mindfulness or heedfulness is like nectar, and mindlessness and carelessness is like death. Basically, it will prevent you from attaining enlightenment.
얼마 가담 게시 메인 공자를 세제 요즘도 메인 공자
벤콤가?
공자
공자.
공자 대고 응에만 작반을 그만 독자제 사러 와서 뭐 자, 대고 배 무슨 그런 메인 코드 거리 배 무슨 신앙치도 와. 자, 근데 대고 메인 코드라 배 신앙치도 그런 하고 사러 와. 대고 하고도 야, 당한 뭐 독자 쇼제린도 다 메인 코가 좀 무슨 신앙치 하나 전부 돈으로 쉬어서러 와. 我听着照顾自己的，对了人的，可能这么多，这个你们俩起下去，这话起个啥？我跟他们公巴去了，那么针对了，跟他们给些针对了。这车话在其中，就在那个城市，咱修点个的是吧？在城市这点晓得，你妈这咱个车话可惜你们错的啥哇？这他学了我啥？今大在学问题有啥的？这学看的呀，他说他全国他说投票啥的，可能前年没有了啥的哇？他个学呀，他俺托马松上。 그런 셈나 되는 어떤 스코어 살아. 자, 그래 점도 제 당도 变没些都样的，这个卡普巴嘛卡不，这第一点是，这学六年了，比他俺学啥他人通常意思，学过嘛的是吧？这挺正确的是。真的，常常他个他这给我的就是卡拉是要过啥基本的去，给我写了蛮多对这卡拉三嘛是你嘛可以，能碰着的啷呢？他这能碰到样的啷是给我写啷着嘛，懂呢？
Tini sama maza.
sama maza. Ante gewa di ndo zan sama ya bon sa yes. Ni ma ze da kono cha kong de ze gom ja do sa ti na ze chou xiam de di sa ze chou ba de se pu qiu sa de wa. Xiang chou ba de do ze zang ma xi da jia sa ma de ya ni ma de ti jin da ze yin qiu sa de kono jin da de se. Zhen chou ba de zang ma de so ba. De ya ze pu. De jin da le qiu sa ze qi. Ze le kono gom ja so da xi ze de kono de me ge yin do sa. Jin da yun a xi zhen qiu ba de ji. De kono me de dang sa te la yo ro. 第二次嘛，就把这个多少的起来噻，个真的，个都压力都上的，怕他们上去，他好就把要求，本空间太大，就把要求的都在哪儿噻。我打算去去做到工，晨曦还有嘛，工大就没送去直接。
Das was is Kadampa Master Ben Gungyer. And so he was a monk, but he wasn't always a monk. He was a layperson first, and he was actually quite a criminal, but he wasn't really aware of how terrible he actually was. But people were all afraid of him, and even when they just heard his name, they would like almost like pass out of fear, and they would think this, oh no, here he is. And so he never actually realized that. And then one day he found out that this is how people felt when they heard his name, and he felt terrible about himself. He said, this is how people feel when they hear my name. I must be like a demon. This cannot go on. I have to practice the Dharma. I have to become a monk. So then he came to Gadamba Geshe, and then became a monk in his presence, and practiced with a lot of mindfulness. And so one day there was a talk, I guess, a ceremony going on at the monastery. There were a few other monks all together. And then there was the time where during the talk where they would pass out the yogurt. And so there were the monks all rowed up and lined up, and he was at the end of the row. And so he saw the yogurt being poured into the bowls, the monks' bowls, starting from the beginning of the row. And it's always the first ones get the better part of the yogurt. And so he was at the end of the row. And so he thought that, oh, I'm not gonna get any good yogurt. They're getting the good yogurt. And that moment he recognized that negative thought, and immediately he turned his bowl upside down. And when the yogurt came his way and they wanted to pour it in, he says, I don't need any. I already had plenty. And so then he was mindful of, he practiced mindfulness by sometimes when he was being very virtuous, when he was being really wholesome, he would eat a nice meal. But when on a day where he had a bad day and he had some negative thoughts, he wouldn't eat at all. And so this is how he would practice. And so also then one day he was at his cave practicing, and it was not too clean in the cave. And a sponsor, a benefactor, announced his visit. And so he thought that, no, since this benefactor is coming, I should probably clean up a little bit. And so then he started cleaning up, and then as he was cleaning up, and then the donor came, he realized what he was actually doing, and then he picked up a pile of ashes, some dirt, and he threw it all over his beautiful cleaned offerings, and then he just left it dirty like that, because he didn't want to be puffed up by pride when the donor comes. And so then Padampa Sangye then later said that this Beng Gunya is the best Dharma practitioner in Tibet, because he is someone who has such mindfulness. And so this story just shows how important mindfulness and heedfulness are.
我真正多的康熙年帕这样多，我讲到年帕的中开始呢，这些朋友点过来是你妈接了，你中这么的用这个人，这样过来是多的，他康熙年帕些呢，推荐的车玩笑，是你把些呢把车图过来，你把我嘛些呢的，他那跑这就这年帕我些去嘛，然后这些怎么呢？我现在把车图来是，年帕的用天这个，意思对我些车从年帕用天的。我在我家去呢，吃饭没？我家现在哦，我学会他在城市路上的这个嘛，在说，他说，当时几个月，他们那里边这种了，多少年都想了的，多少年都想了的，通常没被解决的，是我但多少年都从嘛想的，通常没被解决的一种了，我这里是我这他那边去被求救，是他这里是那边去被求救。
And so all kinds of conditions can arise in a day, and whatever arises, be mindful of what arises. If you're mindful, as it is, the sutras say that if you recognize the fault as a fault, then you can actually separate from the fault. If you do not recognize the fault as a fault, you will never separate from it. So it's important to recognize it. If you do recognize it, a fault can actually turn into a good quality. Therefore, always examine yourself. Milarepa also said that whatever you do, whether you're walking, standing, sleeping, or sitting, always look at your mind. This is the way to practice the Dharma continuously. And so this now completes the 10 things on which you should depend.
我这其真的，他这里头上下呢是，其他的，那个总是他那说用什么的，让朝鲜以前什么路径嘛错，并且最近那个中医呢用没写在，我等到那个中医呢嘛错用什么的，中医等就等我用什么的，真的可是呢，咱个这节目上么些，当嘛做还有那个吧。我这些主要因真的今年了，这咱们有人做过来说过了，这对他你说这说那什么这说的，这怕说他们大把做是，大嘛做大把你的话，我大把就业去吧，就那就你去吧，就话谁，我这期的片，就业去吧，就那，就你去吧，就话，对，这样对咱大把做相关的，这样对他当然做，咱们说人家情况的，这。提前那个做清了，这你看使用上嘛，可是呢，把小脚提那这样做确实提这个嘛的，这可是那几个，这是打算用个嘛吧？我这面对真可些上车间没啥用这个的，面对我这用上嘛的，真的你嘛的，那种理解的嘛，这起步是。
We stop the teachings here for today, and also we will take a break from these teachings for about 3 months, and we will continue probably beginning of next year, maybe at the end of December, more into next year, because Ruben says I'm going to be traveling for about 3 months. And so I'm going to Nepal, actually first going to Mongolia for 2 or 3 weeks, and then going to Nepal, but really going there because of Nepal. Because Holiness Chetsang Rinpoche is giving teachings on the Treasury of Pith Instructions, and that will be a 2 months long teaching starting on October 10th until December 10th. And so before that, since he's already going to Nepal, Rupen will go to Mongolia for 2 or 3 weeks. So it will take about 3 months altogether. And it will be a bit hard to continue the teachings while he's in Asia because the internet connection might not always be so reliable over there. But we will continue when he gets back.
真的草马的，我让说在你呢，说你草马的，真的，人家说的，让叫人家这个对多拿起陪年草马的土地去，真的就嘛说哈，没听的嘛，你陪土呀，这个做这个有事。
Thank you everyone for being so diligent with this text and following it, the precious Garland of the Sublime Path, and we will continue later.
真的到这里给兴趣了。
Now let's do dedications.
一边是我们旗下的这些。
Glorious, holy, venerable, precious, kind, root and lineage lamas, divine assembly of Yidams and assemblies of Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, Yogins, Yoginis, and Dakinis, dwelling in the 10 directions. Please hear my prayer. May the virtues collected in the 3 times by myself and all sentient beings in samsara and nirvana, and the innate root of virtue not result in the 8 worldly concerns, the 4 causes of samsara, or rebirth as a Shravaka or Pratyeka Buddha. May all mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me and mine, obstructors who harm, misleading Maras, and the hordes of demons experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly attain unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. By the power of this vast root of virtue, may I benefit all beings through my body, speech, and mind. May the afflictions of desire, hatred, ignorance, arrogance, and jealousy not arise in my mind. May attachment of fame, reputation, wealth, honor, and concern for this life not arise for even a moment. May my mind stream be moistened by loving kindness, compassion, and bodhicitta. And through that, may I become a spiritual master with good qualities equal to the infinity of space. May I gain the supreme attainment of Mahamudra in this very life. May the torment of suffering not arise at the time of my death. May I not die with negative thoughts. May I not die confused by wrong view. May I not experience an untimely death. May I die joyfully and happily in the great luminosity of mind as such and the pervading clarity of Dharmata. May I, in any case, gain the supreme attainment of Mahamudra at the time of death or in the bardo.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jopanla.
Thank you.
Have a great
Gracias.
trip.
Gracias.
Gracias.
Yes.
Buen
Yeah,
viaje.
thank you.
Thank you.
Gracias.
Good
Gracias,
trip.
Sofía.
Have safe travels. Safe trip.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Yeah, okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jopanla.
Thank you.